Breaking news this morning, the Cleveland Browns have named their starting quarterback. Deshaun Watson will be the starter for Cleveland going forward and for week 1 at Jacksonville. Dan Orlowski, we will have a much larger conversation about this a little later on, but let's react to this one more time. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm shocked. I thought football decision-wise, it would be a toss-up between him and Shedeur, and then obviously Shedeur being younger, I would have leaned that way. Coming off of the performance this weekend and then the press conference, I would have thought no shot that Deshaun Watson would be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I'm shocked. I think it's a significant and huge miss by this organization.
Deshaun Watson, 9-10 as a starter. He missed 49 games for the Cleveland Browns since he has joined the franchise. Let's now turn our attention to the Chicago Bears. You know who their starter is going to be. Obviously, it's Caleb Williams. And the Bears and their starters, including Williams, did play the opening series in their preseason game against the Bengals. Came out a little flat, though. Plagued by penalties, Williams was 2 of 5 for 28 yards. One of the 3 incompletions was a throw to Colston Loveland that was missed by Caleb. And Ben Johnson was asked about it post-game. Here he was.
What did you see on the shot Caleb took to Colston down? It looked like it was just a little high.
I probably would go somewhere else with the ball on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to guess Caden Davis is probably where he wanted to go with that one. But nonetheless, Ben Johnson's comments essentially critiquing a little bit his quarterback. Something or nothing, Kevin?
Something, but it's a good something. The greats want to be coached hard. There were always these stories that whenever Tom Brady got a new quarterback coach or offensive coordinator, he'd come up to them and say, I want to be coached as hard as possible. And we see this right now with Ben Johnson and Caleb, where there's this element where I think the fan base is saying, hey, we're going to be good for a decade. But in that building, they're saying, hey, we still got a lot to prove. Last December 1st, Ben Johnson said we're winning in spite of our passing game, not because of it, and was very, very, very critical of where Caleb was going with the ball and some of the open guys who weren't being hit, all that stuff. To me, this is just coaching a young quarterback really, really, really hard. And I love everything about it. I just think that there's going to be an element all year of Ben Johnson staying on Caleb's butt, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's something. I think it's a little bit more than just the coaching. I do agree with that point, but there is so much of a football reality attached to this one play and this one moment that is going to be needed for Caleb to really take that next step and get to the next level, and also the Bears offense, because this one play is an example of, for the group that clamors about the completion percentage for Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the 32nd, whatever he ranked last year. Like, this is the ammo for them.
Yeah.
Because from a football just thought, I can sit here and say, this ball should go to the running back. And this is the reason why. Okay, so this is a tape. This is called a zone blitz. The pressure comes from the bottom of your screen. I'm a proponent of throwing into pressure more often than not. Loveland's running down the seam. Now, the linebacker that's about on the 18-yard line is really the read. If he's shallow, you throw it deep. If he's deep, you throw it shallow. This would, on tape, say, this ball should go to the running back. He's uncovered there. And so this is the world that the Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are living in, is aggressive decision versus completion decision. They're different. There's a difference between the right choice and a good choice. Context of the moment. It's a preseason game versus regular season game. Open to Caleb Williams is different than open to me. He's more talented of a player than I ever was, times 4 million. The situation, it's 1st and 20. It's not 2nd and 8. It's the first quarter, not the fourth quarter. And so there's a reality where you're sitting there and understanding the coach's perspective of, I need that completion. And then I always say the fine line of, as the player, but I can make that throw. And so if it completes it for a touchdown, you're going, this is pretty sick. I got a guy who can do that. And I think that's the balance between this coach and player, is the coach knows, let's make that throw. And the player's like, but I can make that throw. And that's the world that they're going to live in.
They're going to have, yeah.
So that's why I think it's nothing, because it's the preseason, right? And I think these kind of conversations between head coach or OC and quarterback happen behind the scenes. It's just that Ben Johnson was asked. I think when I heard that clip, I thought back to 2 things. One moment was Caleb's pro day. And all the talk when I would talk to scouts or GMs or executives about Caleb was, we know he can do the Superman stuff. We know that. We want to see him master the simple. We want to see him do the simple. And then I think back to Ben Johnson's first training camp with the team and asking around people in Chicago, okay, what is that working dynamic like? What is Ben Johnson like as a first-time head coach? And everybody was like meticulous, disciplined, like very detail-oriented. And because of that, I wasn't surprised by his comment yesterday, because his point is, we know that Caleb can make the Superman plays. That's what makes him so special. You talked about his talent, Dan. He's uniquely gifted in ways that so many players wish they were. But in these moments, understand that sometimes the simple's okay. Sometimes the check down's okay. Live to see another down. And I think those are the steps towards becoming a great quarterback. And I think he's in that process. So it's the preseason. If we're having this conversation and it's week 17 and this team is teetering on, are they going to make the playoffs or not? I think it's a different conversation. He's still early in this relationship.
Week 4. You know, if this is something that's happening in week 4, because this is a very deep football conversation, but if he makes these types of decisions, maybe not the exact replica, and you don't get points, and all of a sudden you're sitting at 2-2 or 2-3 in week 5, then this noise gets louder and louder and louder.
That's fair.
I go back to a moment with Matthew Stafford, probably 6 or 7 years into his career. We're watching tape. He tries to make this throw on a corner route, and I'm sitting there watching it with him, and I'm pointing to this guy that's wide open, very similar to the clip that we just watched. And I'm like, why don't you throw this throw? And he looks at me and he goes, because I can and you can't. No. But that's a very real thing. You know what I'm saying? You're right to laugh. I laughed too.
You just have to say it like that.
But that's these players and quarterbacks that are so differently talented. It's so hard to get them to make the boring throw that we can. Yeah. Why don't you make that throw? Because anybody can make that throw. You didn't take me number 1 to make that throw.
Right.
You took me number 1 to make that throw. And unless you're making it, there's going to be friction.
Right.
All right.
I do think, remember, the most foundational quarterback for Ben Johnson's development was Jared Goff, who always ripped the ball in there very quickly, threw guys open, and more often than not, took the easy route. So I think that there's also an adjustment there going from Goff to Williams.
Okay, I was going to comment on something else. I thought you were going to go longer there. I agree with all of you and what you're saying about Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a push-pull this year. Clearly, the Bears are coming in more as the hunted than the hunter, like they were a year ago. My biggest issue with this preseason game was the penalties. The penalties that then led on this first drive specifically to 3 incompletions. It's a problem. They had 81 yards of penalties in this preseason game alone. Last year, I believe they were the 8th most penalized team in football. They had 1 million issues rushing the passer last year in terms of calling the penalties. That is an area Ben Johnson needs to clean up, and he needs to do it quickly, because I am terrified. Week 1 against the Vikings, I have a note somewhere, I can't find it. They had more penalties than any other team in the National Football League. That's where my concern is, because then it leads to errors, and they need to clean that up.
One of the things that swung their offense last year was early on in the season, to your point, they were getting killed by penalties. Yeah. They cleaned that up. They had some of the miracle plays by Caleb, some of the 4th down conversions.
And they're getting random turnovers and winning.
It's just not reliable.
Yeah.
It's not. And
turnovers without a pass rush at a historic rate. That is not going to happen again.
No, you're not going to win those 1-score games. You might not be the team that can overcome all this in the final seconds of a game like you were a year ago.
Over it, Shay. You're
Breathe.
over it right
It's the preseason. Shay, breathe. We got time.
I hate when you say that. He always says that to me.
You're all over. I'm impressed. Like you got it.
Yeah,
you got it.
Thank you.
Like,
I know my team that I like.
Can we take a compliment? Can we say, you know what?
I do.
To channel Matthew Stafford, she can do this, and
You can't.
No, let's not high five on her for that, dude. I give a compliment, and I